Hi, friend. Good morning. Welcome back to a Faithful God podcast. My name is Tammy, and I am so excited to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about some of the myths of human trafficking. So grab your favorite beverage and join me for today's show. Good morning, friend. Welcome back to a Faithful God podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about something that I have been diving into. And you may, if you watched or listened to either or to Monday Morning Dose of Hope this past week, then you know that I have just recently just joined the fight against human trafficking. And so today I want to talk about the different myths of human trafficking and some of the things that I thought. And so I know that if I'm thinking that, there are some of you out there that maybe are thinking the same thing. So I'm going to share that with you today. Just to give you a quick backstory, I know I did this on Monday, but in case you haven't listened to or watched that show yet. So I've been walking in obedience this year. That has been my word for the year. That was the word that God laid on my heart. And laid on my heart a verse, which is Psalm 32, chapter 8. No, excuse me, Psalm 32, verse 8 and 9. And you know what? I should have pulled it up. I don't have it right in front of me. I should have done that. But basically it's saying, I will guide your steps, or I hear the Lord saying, I will guide your steps. I will, you can use my sight as your guide, my eyes as your guide. So just come with me, don't be stubborn, just come. And so I just totally botched that verse. I really did. Total transparency here. I just totally botched it. But anyway, I should have written that down for me to do it somewhere on my desk. But anyway, so several years ago, I learned about human trafficking. I really thought human trafficking only happened in other countries. I had no idea it was happening right here in the United States. And I just felt this piercing in my heart back then, several years ago. Now, fast forward over these last probably about, 4 or 6 months or so, I've really been feeling God's been putting things, as only our amazing God does, has been putting things in my life regarding human trafficking, and kind of, putting things like timing has been perfect as always, because again, his, we know his timing is perfect, but all these things where he has been leading me. And a couple of months ago, I actually said to my husband, I said, I think God is going to use me. That was the first time I actually said it out loud. But I said, I think God's going to use me to help in the fight against human trafficking. I don't know what it looks like, but I think he's going to use me. And sure enough, as I go into this deeper and he puts more things right in front of me, right in my inbox, you know how God does those things. And so this is me. I'm going to be transparent with you today because these are things that, these myths that I thought. And I think it's a myth. These myths are some of the things that everyone thinks. We don't live in a third world country, so we feel like, gosh, we're immune to these things. We're this can't happen here in the United States, but it is. It is. So we just want to talk about some of these things and be more aware. And I don't know where I belong yet. I don't know exactly where God is calling me in this fight, but I know that it's going to grow. I know my role in this is going to grow. But one of the things I'm an obsessive planner. I will plan and I will research things to the point where I won't pull the trigger because I am so busy. It's a fear mechanism. I mean, quite frankly, it's a fear archetype, as a matter of fact, but I won't pull the trigger. And so all this time I've been praying to God and saying, you know what, you know who I am, Lord. You know that I want to plan this more. I want to take months and months and months, but I've just felt him urging me to just get moving, to just take one step out of the box. And I've been asking a lot of questions of, but how can you use me, Lord? I'm just one little person and this is huge. And how can you use me? And as I said the other day, I really felt him saying, Tam, I've given you this platform. You talk to men and women all over the world every single day. I've given you this platform. You already have a platform. And I also felt him nudging me to say, you know what, Tammy, you know how to pray. You can pray. We can start there. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the end of the show. But let's go ahead and get on them with some of these myths about human trafficking. So let's talk about real quick what human trafficking is. So, and I'm going to read, I've got a bunch of notes here. I'm going to read a lot from my notes today because I just want to make sure. One of the things that has also kept me from really jumping right on this is because I'm the type of person, and again, I mentioned this the other day, but I'm the type of person that when I see something like this, when I hear something like this, I want to pick up a baseball bat and I want to come out swinging. But what I'm learning in all of this is to reel back a little bit because I don't want my hollering, my ignorance, meaning ignorance in that I don't know a lot about it. I've got so much to learn, but also my ignorance in the way I behave. And I don't want anyone to miss the message because of the way I'm behaving about it. So I've really had to do a lot of praying about this and stuff. And quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, I've shed a lot of tears. This is a heavy, heavy, hard subject. There have been a lot of tears, and I have asked God on multiple occasions, like, Lord, why have you chosen me for this fight? Because this is hard, and I don't think I want this one. You know, God, can you please just give me a little something different? How about we give that to someone else and I do something different? Just because when I have a hard time just sitting on the sidelines and looking at something and working from the sidelines on it. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I tend to jump all in with my heart, everything, and just get, kind of bogged down sometimes in the pain of it, in the hurt, in the injustice, in all of it. So anywho, so we're gonna, this has been the way I've been working through this the last couple of months and everything. But so human trafficking is the unlawful act of transporting or coercing, people in order to benefit from their work or service, typically in the form of forced labor or sexual exploitation. So in other words, it's a trafficker is a person that's using force, fraud, or coercion for monetary gain, for monetary gain. I'm trying to think. I want you to know that I am really watching what I'm saying in this sense that I want to make sure I'm not saying anything that isn't true. And again, because I'm so new to this, learning so much about it, I'm kind of cautious at times about what I'm saying because I want it to be truth and not just my interpretation of it. I hope that makes sense. So that's what human trafficking is. Another thing human trafficking is it's a business. And this is one of the things that really hit me hard. This is a business. This is are you ready for it? So the International Labor Organization, they estimate that forced labor and human trafficking is a $150 billion industry worldwide. Did you catch that? $150 billion. That's how much, and again, it's an estimate because it's kind of hard to get those exact numbers, but they're estimating $150 billion. This is a business. This is a business. Isn't that crazy? The other part of, or another, I guess I should say, another part of that, of the business in understanding it is that, and this painted a really clear picture for me as well, is what's a business? You have a supply, you have a demand for something, and therefore you get, you have a supply to meet that demand. Does that make sense? So there's a demand for this labor trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking. There's this demand for it, this high demand for it. And therefore, these traffickers, to run their business, have to increase their supply. They need to, as the demand increases, they've got to increase their supply. And here's something that's really, really interesting is, we've talked about, and every one of us has felt the effects of COVID. I don't think there's a single aspect on this earth that, or a single circumstance. I don't think there's anything in this world that has not been affected by COVID. And human trafficking is no different. Human trafficking has been affected as well because people are not able to go out as much. So the people who are purchasing sex, who are purchasing porn, it's kind of number one, they're struggling. These Johns who are purchasing are struggling mentally, emotionally, and so where do they go for that? They go to their vice. What is their vice? Sexual exploitation of women, men, and children. That one's, it's all hard to swallow, but the whole children part. So at any rate, so the supply has increased and it's gone more online. And so these young girls, some of the things they're doing on Instagram to make money, and some of them, a lot of them are trafficked, and so they're forced to make these connections. They're forced to help recruit other women. They are forced to, do, I don't even know exactly for sure, but the pictures that they're sending and stuff, they have to meet a certain quota each and every day before, they can come home, before they can, or if they're already home, before the day is out, kind of thing. Does that make sense? It's granted, it doesn't make sense because it's a horrific thing, but I'm hoping that makes sense so you understand, this is a business, and these are what these girls, these, men, women, and children are forced to do. And these are some of the rules that a trafficker gives them in order, to not be beaten that day, quite frankly, to not be beaten that day. If you come home, when we're talking about prostitution, if you come home with less than this amount of money, well, they knew they couldn't because they would be beaten, horrifically. No one should be beaten anyway, but I'm talking horrible beatings. And so, and the other thing about human trafficking is that it's not just, I think so often we think it's just sex, not just, because that is horrific, that we think of sexual exploitation, but it's also labor trafficking. And I have a lot to learn about all of it for sure. As a matter of fact, later this summer, I actually have a survivor coming on the show, survivor of labor trafficking. And I'm really anxious to learn more about helping to stop that. Yeah. I also, by the way, have another survivor coming on at the end of the year as we talk about human trafficking there as well. So those are coming, and it's me helping to educate, using this platform to help educate everybody, make everybody aware of it. Not everybody is going to be called to the fight of human trafficking. I want you to understand that, but just to be aware of it is so important. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a bit. So yeah, traffickers, they use violence, they use threats, deception, debt bondage. They use, and I'm reading this from some sites, and other manipulative tactics to force people to engage in commercial sex or to provide labor or services against their will. Okay, so let's talk about this. Myth number one, human trafficking only happens in other countries. Well, that isn't true. The National Trafficking Hotline receives reports of human trafficking cases in each of the 50 states and Washington, D.C. So in every one of our states, and friends, here's something that I'm learning is that it's not just happening in the big cities within each of these states. It's happening in every one of our communities. Every one, there's a form of human trafficking happening in every one of our communities. It's just unbelievable. We think, for those of us who are listening, or for those of you who are listening here in the United States, we think that, oh gosh, no, that doesn't happen here, but it does. It's happening everywhere. Wherever there are vulnerable people, wherever, it's happening everywhere. And again, it's a they're estimating $150 or $1 billion industry. It's happening everywhere. And it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Yeah. So myth number 2, human trafficking looks the same everywhere. It does not. It does not. And I have to be honest with you, I thought I did. I think, we think of the movie Taken, or even any other movie where, someone is, forced, kicking and screaming, and thrown into a van. And that's not what's happening, friends. Well, let me rephrase. That's happening, yes. But that's not the norm. In fact, in the United States, a lot of what is happening is what's called the Romeo method or lover boy method, where these girls are, they are recruited in the way of, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. The way they are recruited, that's the best way to say it, is that these men will get to know them, tell them how much, and how do they find some of this stuff out? Nowadays, it's super easy because they're finding it out on social media. Now, I want you to understand that I think social media, granted, I think there are some really bad things about social media, such as that, but there are some really good things too, because on the opposite side of that, there's a lot we can do, and a lot of, we can spread the message of stopping, of awareness of human trafficking on social media too. But these are places where these traffickers are finding out information about these young girls, and what they're doing is they're getting to know them. They're making these girls fall in love with them. It's a grooming process of at least 6 months of, oh my gosh, the girl thinking, oh my gosh, I found the man of my dreams, and he's wonderful and he wants the best for me. And then what happens is he winds up telling them most of the time. Well, I don't even know if it's most of the time. So I'm going to say some of the time, because I don't know for sure if it's most of the time. But then what they do is a lot of times they say, you know what, my company is moving me to another city, and I want you to come with me because you are the love of my life. And then as soon as they do that and make that move, the trafficking starts almost immediately, and that is prostitution, that is porn, that is labor trafficking. So those are the things that happen. And that's what I mean when I say trafficking looks different in every culture. That is totally different than in Cambodia, where in Cambodia, just the culture is, where these, when men and women have girls, people congratulate them because girls are worth more money. And in an area, in a culture where there's so much poverty, this is what's happening with their kids, is they're selling their kids and trafficking their kids to make money. So it's different in every culture. A phenomenal show to watch if you are interested in watching is Nefarious. And it was on Amazon Prime. I rented it for $3.99, so it's super cheap to rent. But it actually takes different cultures. They go to different, I think it's 4 of them, different countries, one of them being in the U.S., and show how human trafficking exists in each of those countries. So it is definitely different in every culture. It is not the same. And so, human trafficking is the same, that force, fraud, or coercion. But how the means and how they traffic are different in every single country. Myth number 3 is women choose. So this is one I feel really ignorant, friends, but honestly, I thought this. I really did. Then myth number 3 is women choose to be in prostitution and porn, and they can choose to walk away. And that's a myth. It's a myth. While there is a small percentage of people who choose to go into prostitution, they typically wind up being trafficked and exploited by their pimps. When they take on a pimp, that's what a pimp does. So they wind up in that scenario, even if they choose to go into it. Most of the girls who are in prostitution, most of the girls and men that are in porn, children that are in porn, they are trafficked. This is not a choice for them. And this goes into and a whole lot more, a whole lot more than I can even explain to you. And I'll give you some more besides Nefarious. You definitely want to watch Nefarious. Because these aren't these aren't my stories to tell. I want to be very cautious about the way I do that. I want to honor the victims and survivors of human trafficking. So I want to be really cautious in how I say this. But what's happening is, these women, they get in there and, people think all the time, well, they can just walk away. Well, they can't just walk away. You've heard of Stockholm Syndrome, right? Where they form this trauma bond with their trafficker. You hear about that, like when the girls that are taken and kept somewhere for years and years and years and, hidden in a basement, like they want out, and yet it's not easy to get out because they form these trauma bonds with their traffickers. And so, and also, they are threatened and brainwashed as they are being trafficked, whether it's labor trafficking, sex trafficking, all of the above. And by the way, a lot of that is intertwined. There are a lot of those who are victims of labor trafficking who are then forced into, sexual exploitation and that as well. But they're being brainwashed. They are, the traffickers know everything about this person's family, and so they're threatened. That if you leave, I know where your family is. If you leave and you have a child, you're not getting your child. And I even heard something the other day. I truly don't remember where it was. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I've been watching a whole lot, sitting in on meetings. I've been reading a lot, so I can't remember where I heard this. But there are even a lot of traffickers who will intentionally impregnate their victims, their girls, so that they cannot leave, and it makes it harder for them to leave, because these women are going to be tied to their traffickers for the rest of their lives because of the trafficker getting either custody or visitation or what have you. They're going to be tied to them their whole life. So, these traffickers, they are, I don't know, there's a lot of words for them, aren't they? There are a lot of words for them, but they're smart. They're smart. They're business people. They're very shrewd business people. Yeah, I have a lot of other words for them too, but we'll just leave it at that. We'll just leave it at that for sure. So myth number 4 is, I have boys, so I don't really, thank goodness I don't have to worry about that. That was one of my thoughts is, I realize the likelihood of them being trafficked is pretty small. And while that is true, there are boys and, that are still being trafficked, especially the children. It's horrific. However, here's where boys play a huge role in this business. They're creating demand. They're buying sex. They're buying porn. They are creating a demand for human trafficking. They are creating a demand for these women and children and boys. So the thing is, I can't remember the exact statistic, but for those who purchase, who are in that part of the equation of human trafficking, for those who purchase, I believe the statistic is 80% of all of them across in the world come from the United States. So how can we help? What can we do if we have boys? We can teach our boys, from the get-go that, about healthy sex and what is okay and what isn't. And I won't go into all of it because, again, I'm trying to learn so much about it. But Moral Revolution, if you hop on over to there, they are doing a phenomenal job of teaching healthy boundaries with sex and how to talk to your kids about this. And here's the thing, friends, with our computers and Google in our back pockets, these kids are getting them, they're getting these cell phones younger and younger. They have access to the internet. The average age of that, the average age of kids that start watching porn or that are exposed to porn is 9 years old. It's frightening. It's frightening. So no, it doesn't just affect boys. It doesn't just affect girls. Boys are part of the equation too, on both sides. They're part of the equation as far as being trafficked, and they're part of the equation as far as creating the demand for it. So this next thing is not so much as a myth as just food for thought. In our country alone, the laws the laws in our country make it far easier for someone to stay in trafficking than to get out of trafficking because of the criminal records that most of these traffickers these victims wind up having. And granted, I get it because, these women that are getting out of trafficking, and just to give you an example, and have young children, they are not able to go to their school and, volunteer at the school. And and even survivors, I've even heard, survivors talk about this, and, they get that understandably why some of these rules are in place, these laws are in place. But there are some states where they can't ever, if they were to go, some states, if they go for 3 years without any trafficking, without any convictions, anything, they can have their record expunged. But there are other states there's one state, and I can't remember what it is. I don't remember. And I will tell you, policy is not, I'm fairly confident policy is not going to be where my fight is going to be, because I'm really not good with laws and stuff. But we learned that I think there's one state that it's 99 years. So basically you'll never be able to, get a job. I know some women who they can't even get an apartment when they get out because of their record. And I get it. And I've heard several survivors have said too that they understand it, but there has to be a better law, a better way to protect and to get these victims back out in society and living and contributing to our society. So yeah, it's tough. This is a really hard fight. This is a really hard topic. Believe me, I struggle with it all the time. So friend, if you want to know how you can help, number one, this Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I am going to be hosting a stand in prayer for human trafficking, or stand in prayer, against human trafficking. That's a better word, that whole for and against. Standing in prayer against human trafficking. Join me on Facebook Live at 7:30 this Friday night. We are going to just come together and pray together, because we know that where two or more are gathered, God will be there. So we're going to pray for the victims. We're going to pray for the traffickers. I know that's hard to think about, but we need to pray for them as well. We need to pray for those who are purchasing sex. We need to ask God to pierce their hearts, as well as wrap his arms around the victims that are stuck in trafficking right now, to let them know who he is and to give them hope. So if you can, join me over there. If you don't have Facebook Live, or you're going to be out doing something, set an alarm on your phone, and just in that moment at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, lift up a prayer for those involved in trafficking. And also, if you want to know more about trafficking, A21 is a great site to go to. The site that, and the person that I have been I did a course for Finding Your Lane. Phenomenal. If you're hearing all of this and you think, you know what, I want to be a part of this, I want to stop this, go to the Rebecca Bender Initiative, and it's RebeccaBender.org. She actually has a Find Your Lane course. And what it does is it's a series of videos plus all these resources to help you get started. But there are so many ways to battle human trafficking. And she just helps you, gives you a broad overview. And she also, you take an assessment just to kind of see where you are testing as far as your, what would be the best way for you to help fight it. One thing I've learned in all of this and sitting in meetings, what I've heard over and over again is victims saying, you know what, survivors saying, you don't have to change who you are to help fight human trafficking. And that was pretty powerful to me, because to be honest with you, I always thought I needed to do something big and bold if anything was going to happen, and we don't. So even just taking this first step of let's come together and pray, we know how to do that together. Even doing that this Friday night, that's going to make a difference, because that's going to bring awareness. So friend, I'm asking you, if you will, please join me. Again, whether you're joining me live on Facebook or you're joining me just, yourself praying about, against human trafficking, but also share this episode with a friend. Text a friend today and say, you know what, we're going to do this. Text your prayer group, text everybody, in your group at church. Text your friends, everybody, let them know about this and have them join us as well. The more people we can make aware of this, the more people we can pray, because we know prayer is powerful. We know God can do big things. And though I don't expect which would be wonderful, but to have every human trafficking victim released on Friday night at 7 p.m. Was I saying 7:30 earlier? It's not 7:30. I think I said that. It's 7 p.m. Eastern time this Friday, April 30th on Facebook Live. I apologize if I was telling you the wrong date. Just let everybody know. I don't expect that everybody's going to be released from it, but what my hope is, what my prayer is, that everybody feels God's presence in that moment, that they feel God around them, who will give them hope, that there will be a way out for them. So join me for that. Again, share this episode with a friend, and we're going to give the world, and next week's episode, you guys, next Wednesday, I have a couple on. I am so excited to introduce you to them. It is Megan and Ryan Wonderly from Mission Ahava, and they are going to talk about how they are giving children around the world, the vulnerable children, street children who have been trafficked and or are susceptible to trafficking. Just children from all over the world. We're going to talk to them and see what it is. They're going to explain to us what they do. It is a phenomenal program. It's a phenomenal ministry, and I'm just in awe of it. So join me back here next Wednesday for that, friend. And I will see you Friday night, whether you meet me on Facebook Live or you are doing this on your own. We're going to do this at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to stand against human trafficking. All right, friend, have a great day.